A man is dead after a daylight shooting in a residential area near Mississauga Road and Wanless Drive in Brampton.
More than 62,000 property owners have filed complaints with the city of their vacant home tax bill. The city is promising action. We're going to talk to a couple of city councilors coming up.
And we'll take a closer look at a new poll that finds the majority of Canadians are not confident police will find their stolen vehicle.
Good afternoon and welcome to CP24 Live at Noon. I'm Bakari Savage.
And I'm Lena Latifat. Thanks so much for joining us. A man is dead after a daylight shooting in Brampton.
Yeah, officers were called to Finnegan Circle near Mississauga Road and Wanless Drive around 8:30 this morning. Here is a live look at the scene right now. The victim was pronounced dead right there. There's no suspect description just yet, but police say that this does not appear to be a random shooting. And the shooting has left some people living in the area feeling unsafe. Well, Toronto police are set to speak today about the presence of officers at demonstrations in the city. And the update comes after the organizers of a weekend pro-Palestinian protests accused police of using excessive force. So videos posted to social media showed officers pushing protesters back. And police have said that, quote, necessary force was employed after some demonstrators became aggressive. Well, 3 people wound up being charged. A news conference is set today for 1 o'clock.
The defense began presenting its case this morning in the trial of a man accused of killing a Toronto police officer. Umar Zamir has pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder in the death of Constable Jeffrey Northrup. Northrup died after being hit by a car in an underground parking garage at City Hall in July of 2021 while in plain clothes. Prosecutors allege Samir made a series of maneuvers that caused Northrup's death. The defense has said Samir said his wife did not know they were being approached by police officers and tried to escape because they feared for their lives. The defense briefly questioned a family friend today, and we'll hear more evidence on Monday, including possible testimony from Samir himself.
And a man's dead, another's in hospital. This is after a collision in Mississauga last night. It happened just before 10 p.m. This is at the intersection of Dixie Road and Eglinton Avenue. 3 vehicles were involved, with one of them ending up off the road. One man died at the scene. A second male suffered life-threatening injuries. The cause of the collision is under investigation.
And a pedestrian was struck and killed by a vehicle in North York. Police say the woman in her 60s was hit at Avenue Road and Wilson Avenue just after 10 o'clock last night. She was rushed to hospital where she was pronounced dead. The driver of the vehicle remained at the scene. There's no word yet if charges will be laid.
Well, icy road conditions led to 2 crashes involving 16 vehicles that happened on Highway 404 near Aurora this morning. So the OPP says 7 vehicles were involved in a collision in the northbound lanes between Bloomington and Vivian Roads, while 9 vehicles were involved in a crash in the southbound lanes between Wellington Street and Bloomington Road. At least 2 people were taken to hospital with minor injuries. The highway has since reopened to traffic.
A recent poll suggests 2/3 of Canadians say they don't have high hopes that police can find their stolen vehicle.
Right now, let's turn to CTV's Scott Hers, who joins us with more. Scott, what are the key findings of the Nano survey to lead people to say this?
Well, once it's gone, it's gone. That's how a significant number of Canadians are feeling about auto theft. If their vehicle is taken, there is little hope that they'll ever get it back. That's the headline from a new Nanos research poll that was taken this weekend about the thoughts and feelings about a rise in auto theft across the country, not just a GTA problem. However, of course, we see a lot of videos of home security cameras that are shared showing thieves trying to take cars straight from people's driveways. We're also hearing a lot from police about carjacking. So this is a significant problem, of course, here in the GTA, but it is a growing problem across the country. Let's dive into some of these numbers from the Nanos poll that shows a snapshot of many people really losing hope in the ability of police to turn the tide to stop auto theft and ultimately track the vehicle down. The confidence in police finding stolen vehicles, and it shows a lot of people are somewhat not confident or not confident altogether in the ability to find the vehicles and track them down. Meanwhile, 2 in 3 ultimately feeling once the car is gone, it won't be found. And compared to a decade ago, Canadians are feeling unsure if it's even getting better. More than 40% saying they feel police are doing a worse or somewhat worse job protecting their vehicles and ultimately tracking them down. Here's more from CTV News public safety analyst Chris Lewis.
People ultimately need to feel that trust in the police to do their best and do their job in trying to prevent crimes from occurring to them. But I think in the last couple of weeks, the last few months for sure, but most recently with the number of vehicles they seized that were being shipped out of the port of Montreal, it should give the public some solace in that police are catching up now.
And more than 200 vehicles on average are stolen every day across the country. The Insurance Bureau of Canada is saying auto theft has become a national crisis. So the bottom line here, and the big question, what's being done? The feds have recently announced $28 million in new money to help tackle the problem and curb the rise in auto thefts. And they recently held an auto theft summit as well. And also this week, we heard the CBSA and numerous police forces announce the recovery of more than 600 vehicles valued at more than $34 million as part of Project Vector, saying they are making substantial strides in intercepting stolen vehicles. So police continue to investigate. Police say they are catching up. They are making strides in this problem. But as we heard from the Insurance Bureau of Canada, saying auto theft is a national crisis, and we see it particularly here in the Greater Toronto area with so many videos that we see right here of people going up right to your driveway, taking your cars there, or often dealing with violent carjackings as well. So the numbers are showing that Canadians ultimately are feeling not confident in the ability of police to track these vehicles down. Bakari and Lena?
And Scott, some of these thefts have been so brazen, as you noted. It's such a problem in the GTA. Are there any differences depending on where you live, regional differences to the responses?
Yeah, there are, of course, regional differences where people, it's much more visible here in the GTA, but when you get out to smaller communities, it is still a significant concern when you go coast to coast. We hear it and we see it more, of course, in bigger cities and major metropolitan centers, but it is a big concern as you go to these smaller communities. When you talk about more than 200 vehicles stolen every day across the country, that can't just be major cities, so it is a big concern in smaller communities as well.
All right, CTV's Scott Hurst reporting live. Thanks so much, Scott.
Thanks, guys.
Well, the city is saying that it is working to straighten out some of the confusion regarding the vacant home tax.
New numbers provided by the city now puts the number of complaints filed by property owners at 62,000. Every homeowner in the city is required to confirm whether their property is being lived in or not every year. The declaration deadline was last month. Vacant homes are subject to an extra tax, 1% of the value of their property. Some homeowners say they received a vacant home tax bill even though they submitted their declaration on time. Those who don't declare their status also face a fine of just over $21.
I was billed a pretty hefty amount of vacant home tax that I've lived there for 32 years. And I didn't realize to begin with that I have to declare vacancy because I've been there 32 years and never had this issue before.
I'm doing this for my mother. She's 19 years old. So she's alone, she doesn't speak the language. So it's hard, and then you have to go online, which is like, it's not her forte.
Very upset. They don't understand, we are old. I'm 72 years old. But my blood pressure was so high, I almost got a heart attack. I mean, I know I'm dizzy. I come here. To be honest, I don't know. But this is not easy.
And keep it here on Live at Noon. We'll be speaking with some longtime city councilors about this issue coming up.
Okay, looking south of the border, an earthquake hit the New York City area this morning.
The U.S. Geological Survey registered a 4.7 magnitude quake centered in New Jersey and felt in New York City. People in Baltimore, Philadelphia, and other areas also reported feeling the ground shake. New York's Governor Kathy Hochul says her team is assessing the impacts of the tremor. So far, there have been no reports of damage or injuries.
And then looking towards Baltimore, U.S. President Joe Biden is scheduled to visit the site of the deadly bridge collapse there today. The Francis Scott Key Bridge, it was destroyed last week. That's when a cargo ship hit one of its main supports. 6 members of a road work crew are believed to have been killed, but only 2 of their bodies have been recovered. Biden is expected to view the wreckage, meet with victims' relatives, and be briefed by officials. His visit comes after engineers said that they expect to restore navigation in and out of the port of Baltimore by month's end.
You're watching CP24 Live at Noon. More news right after this. Stay with us.
More than 62,000 property owners have filed complaints with the city over their vacant home tax bill. The city is promising action.
And for more on what that means, we're joined by Toronto City Councillor for Ward 14 Toronto, Danforth, Paula Fletcher. Councillor, it's good to see you and sit down with you. Thanks so much for making time. Look, there's a lot of anger and frustration over this. Some city councillors are telling us their phones have been blowing up. Has your phone been blowing up? What have you been hearing?
My phone and my email have been blowing up, yes, by constituents, many of them saying, I paid that. I already paid that. How come I'm getting that vacant home tax bill? And others saying, oh yeah, now I have a penalty. Why I think councillors, the city says they're doing something, but they're being pushed very hard by councillors. I know I'm pushing, Councillor Nunziata is pushing. Budget chief is really upset, and the mayor is saying, this can't happen again next year. So we did have a meeting at council. We were talking about it, and we were assured by the staff, don't worry, everything's going to roll out really well. We kept saying, are you sure? Oh, yes, it's going to be great. Well, it's not great.
Councillor Fletcher, how do you even begin to explain how this happened? And has a gaffe like this been done in the city before?
You know, I can't really explain, but I would say that communications is one thing. Doing a budget, knowing where the money is one thing. Communicating that is another thing. So your guys behind the camera aren't sitting here. You're not running the camera. There's two different things for people to do. And right now, the finance department is doing all the communications. That has to end because that's not what they do. They count money. They don't let people know how to do things and think about things. So it's extremely frustrating for residents who are getting mixed messages. I just met a woman at the Toronto City Hall, and she was told she had to go to City Hall downtown or go to North York. She's from Scarborough. She took a taxi, $80. Scarborough Civic Centre is open. She could have gone there. So this is why people are upset.
Yeah, and I mean, I can't imagine for the seniors as well. Some of them are being told on paper that they're on the hook for up to $10,000. I can't imagine what that would feel like. What is your message to your constituents this afternoon?
My message, settle down. Your councillors have got this. Your mayor has got this. We're going to wipe out that 21-24 penalty. This is very unfortunate. We're very sorry. We're going to fix this. Not happening again.
When do you think the city's going to fix it?
Well, this has to get fixed for next year. You know, this is a tax that you get every year. And one of the councillors said, well, why can't you just get all the bills? If there's utility bills, water, hydro, you know there's somebody in that house. If they're negligible bills, you know it's vacant. Aren't there other ways than having somebody have to declare every time? Well, we might look at doing that instead. But you have to declare every year, and you need to be told clearly, here's what you have to do. You know, a lot of people still don't have the internet. Many seniors don't have computers. Yeah. And somehow at the city, we think everybody's online. They're not.
When I ask you, when is the city going to fix this? A lot of people are waiting for updated records. How long is that process going to take?
I think that might take a bit.
Okay.
And people that did go in and pay, they took a screenshot, some people. Meanwhile, that can't be found in the city records because they don't send out a confirmation saying, thank you, we got your payment. I mean, that's just a basic customer service tenet, right? You do that. So I think that it's going to take a while, but the message has to be, don't worry.
Okay, and Councillor, I know it's still pretty early and everything, but you know, you just mentioned that lady who paid $80 for a cab ride. Yeah. Is there going to be any recourse for these individuals? Because this is a city mistake. Has there been any consideration given to that?
Well, I didn't know that it happened, so I knew when she said, I thought, why did you come here? She said, well, they told me to come here rather than Scarborough. So there's all kinds of those little stories. First of all, you do have to pay the vacant home tax, but if you hadn't paid it yet, you probably aren't going to have to pay the penalty, $21.24. That'll get wiped out. If you've already paid it and you're being told you have to pay it again, that's an administrative error on the city. You fix that, city staff. Get that fixed now. But people shouldn't worry. It's very stressful to get a big bill. Imagine you're sitting there and then you're calling or you can't email and you don't know what to do. So that's why councillors' offices are getting called. And every councillor's office is phoning upstairs to the city administration saying, broken.
Okay, Councillor Paula Fletcher, thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. Right now, we continue to follow breaking news. Police are providing an update. Let's take you live to Brampton.
Good afternoon. Shortly after
so much.
8:30 this morning, Peel Regional Police responded to the area of Sudley and Finnegan Lane in the city of Brampton for reports of shots fired. Patrol officers arrived on scene, commenced life-saving efforts of a 30-year-old male suffering from gunshot wounds, who sadly was pronounced deceased on scene despite the best efforts of Peel EMS and responding officers. Information at the time is limited, but what I can tell you is that investigators have identified a vehicle of interest, a 2020 Honda Civic, 4-door, red in color with gold trim and gold handles. Of particular note at the front of that vehicle is a yellow racing strap, the front right of the vehicle bumper. And the license plate associated to that vehicle is DAPK152. That's Delta Alpha Papa Kilo 152. Again, this investigation is in its infancy and information is limited, but I'll take some questions.
Constable, we see that the body's on the porch there with the tarp on top of it. Is that where the shooting took place? Do we know if the victim kind of came running out until the CPR is administered?
Right. So there is a vehicle on scene. It's unclear at the moment whether the victims associated with the vehicle or the residents in question. But at this point, it appears that the shooting occurred outside.
In terms of suspects, I know that the initial tweet said suspects protection for more. Do we know how many people?
All right. So right now, the working theory is more than one suspect. Okay, that is subject to change. Again, the occupants of that vehicle of interest, the red Honda Civic, should be considered armed and dangerous at this point. If members of the public do come across that vehicle, we urge you to please not approach and dial 911.
Do you know if the suspects were known to the victim at all?
No, that will all be part of the forthcoming investigation, whether or not the suspect or suspects and the victim were known to one another. At this time, based on the totality of the information available to us, we can consider this to be an isolated incident to this victim, and we don't believe that this is a random shooting. Whether or not the victim is the intended target, that will come out in the forthcoming investigation, but we should assure the general public outside of this area that there's no further risk.
Given the time of day, it was around 8:30, so there's lots of kids, parents out. So there should have been a lot of people who maybe potentially saw something. Do you have witnesses who are cooperating with police?
Right. So there are several investigators here on the scene that are conducting residential canvasses for surveillance footage or any witnesses. And there are several cameras that are visible here. We are appealing to residents in the area. If you do have home surveillance footage, please retain that footage, as our investigators will continue to canvass into today and in the coming days. Also, for motorists that were driving in the vicinity in and around 7 a.m. to 9 a.m., if you have dash cam footage, please have a look at that. Again, we're looking for a red Honda Civic 2020. That vehicle is on file as stolen. Of particular note on that vehicle, again, I'll mention, is the yellow racing strap at the front and chrome handles and trim.
So the vehicle stolen, does that mean that there's a possibility that the suspects here stole the vehicle and then committed the crime?
Right. I mean, that's all what will be part of the investigation. It's not uncommon that vehicles are stolen to use in the commission of an offense, but that will be as part of the main investigation.
But right now, that vehicle is listed as stolen.
Currently, the vehicle is stolen, yes.
You said the victim was 30, did I hear that correctly?
Male in his 30s, yes.
Male in his 30s. This is a family neighborhood. Was there anyone else in the vicinity in that time who could have been in danger at that moment?
Well, listen, anytime we have someone being shot at in the vicinity, we know all too well from past incidents that bullets don't always go where they are intended. There were people in the vicinity, folks that called into 911 to report the shooting. Inherently, they are in danger just by being present when gunfire takes place. Fortunately, nobody else was struck.
Constable, how much more of a concern is it the fact that, never a good time for this to happen, but particularly 8:30 morning, residential neighborhood, kids are on their way to school. I mean, this could have been much worse.
Right. A shooting at any time is concerning and just completely unacceptable. When we see it during daylight hours, it is more brazen because there are more people out. There are more potential for witnesses. So that all speaks to some of the motives behind what happened, and that will come forth with the investigation.
Kind of expanding on that, I mean, again, in this neighborhood, victim in that age range. Is there a family? Is there anything you can tell us more about this victim? Is there a family who's mourning the loss of a loved one here today?
Well, I mean, someone out there is going to be mourning the loss of this victim. The particulars to the family, we won't get into that right now. It's still pretty early.
Do we know if there were other people in the house at the time?
That I don't know. Thank you.
Sorry, Constable, what was your last name again?
All right, that is the very latest from Peel Police, updating the media after a fatal shooting in Brampton. This happened in the Mississauga Road and Wanless Drive area. A man was shot and killed. They have now identified a vehicle of interest, a 2020 red Honda Civic. There's no other information on suspect or suspects. Police do say this was an isolated incident, and they also say they're working to identify whether or not this was a targeted or random shooting. Stay with us for the latest on this story. And coming up next on CP24 Live at Noon, we'll walk you through today's headlines. Stay with us.
A man's dead after a daylight shooting in a residential area near Mississauga Road and Wanless Drive in Brampton. We just heard from police. We're going to bring you the very latest coming up.
More than 62,000 property owners have filed complaints with the city over their vacant home tax bill. The city is promising action. We're going to hear from Councillor Francis Nunziata in moments.
And we'll take a closer look at a new poll that finds that the majority of Canadians are not confident police will find their stolen vehicle.
Good afternoon and welcome to CP24 Live at Noon. I'm Lena Ladefat.
And I'm Bakari Savage. More than 62,000 property owners have filed complaints with the city over their vacant home tax bill. The city is promising action.
Council Speaker and Councillor for Ward 5, York Southwestern, Francis Nunziata, issued a statement saying she opposes the charge and plans to move a motion to remove the charges. And she joins us live with the latest. Thanks so much for joining us. Tell us more about your frustrations and this motion.
Oh, Liz, it's been very frustrating the last couple of days. Actually shocked and disgusted. We were receiving hundreds of calls from residents, mostly seniors, and as well as emails. Shocked when the residents received this tax bill for $8,000, and they were so confused. And so what we've been doing in the past couple of days is going, my staff has been helping these residents to file a complaint, and as well, I'm calling them all personally. But the process and the communication to residents were disgusting. A lot of residents that I heard from actually declared and still received a bill for $9,000. And as you know, when you declare, they don't give you a confirmation number. So it's, I had one senior call me, an elderly man that he just lost his wife a couple of months ago. He was crying on the phone. He was just in a panic. So I hope we can correct this. I'm asking council to not charge the late fees, because we're told by staff that they would still have to pay the late fees. I think it's terrible. We made the error. Why should the residents be paying for an error that the city did?
And at this point, Friday, April 5th, what do you want to say to your constituents about those who are still trying to get in touch with your office and, work on this issue?
Right. And I think a lot of the councillors were not aware of this. We did a very poor job of communicating, especially to, people in the city that don't speak English or can't read English. They had no idea that they had to declare, and some of them did declare, but still got the bill. Well, what we're doing is we sent out an e-blast to all my residents in York Southwest and advising them if they need assistance that we would come to their home and help them, or come to my constituency office. So we're trying to reach out to as many residents as we can to help them. Because a lot of them are just, they don't know what to do. And a lot of them don't have computers. And so they're asking for our assistance. I just think it's terrible. Not only are they getting this tax bill for $9,000, we just increased the property tax over 9%, and here they get a bill for $8,000.
Yeah, that's got to be so stressful. So you're asking city staff not to charge late fees. What if somebody's already paid that fee?
I know. I had one resident call me yesterday and said she rushed to pay it because she was afraid. But we're telling residents not to pay it. And hopefully what we can ask staff is the residents that have paid it to reimburse them on their tax bill.
And how do you make sure that something like this doesn't happen next year, Councillor?
Well, what we've asked is a member's motion that Councillor Fletcher and I put forward to ask the city manager to bring back a report prior to the 2025 process on how we can do proper communication. And I think it should be done in different languages as well. So we need to be prepared for the next year. And I'm hoping that the staff and the city manager can bring forward the process to council so we can give input on what sort of communication and how we can communicate to our residents. This should never happen, and it should never happen again. It was a huge error on behalf of city staff.
And, you know, when it comes to internal communications, how's that going?
Well, when I first found out about it 2 days ago, and we're trying to get answers, and we haven't received any answers, but it is my understanding that the mayor at the executive committee next week is going to bring forward an item, but there was no communication from no one at the city. We had to reach out to staff to find out what was going on.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Council Speaker and Councillor for Ward 5, York Southwest, and Francis Nunziata, thanks so much for speaking with us. We really appreciate this update.
Thanks, Councillor.
Thank you.
And Toronto police are set to speak today about the presence of officers at demonstrations in the city.
The update comes after the organizers of a weekend pro-Palestinian demonstration accused police of using excessive force. Videos posted to social media showed officers pushing protesters back. Police have said necessary force was employed after some demonstrators became aggressive. 3 people wound up being charged. A news conference is set for 1 p.m.
And several city councillors have signed a letter reaffirming their commitment to upholding the rights and freedoms of all Torontonians, including freedom of assembly. The 6 councillors say that they've heard from some residents about fears of engaging in protests.
A man is dead after a daylight shooting in Brampton, and we just received an update from police.
Officers were called to Finnegan Circle near Mississauga Road and Wanless Drive around 8:30 this morning. A 30-year-old man was pronounced dead on the scene. Police say that the shooting appears to be targeted.
And Peel police have released a photo of a vehicle of interest now, a red Honda Civic. Officers say it had been reported stolen.
We are appealing to residents in the area. If you do have home surveillance footage, please retain that footage, as our investigators will continue to canvass into today and in the coming days. Also, for motorists that were driving in the vicinity in and around 7 a.m. to 9 a.m., if you have dash cam footage, please have a look at that. Again, we're looking for a red Honda Civic 2020. That vehicle is on file as stolen. Of particular note on that vehicle, again, I'll mention, is the yellow racing strap at the front and chrome handles and trim.
The shooting has left some people living in the area feeling unsafe.
We are seeing like these activities in Brampton nowadays, so like with my baby, I feel really unsafe on this one. We are seeing those news like a lot of time, and that's why like we have installed cameras in our houses as well. So it's pretty unsafe, and like we want to see something better for the people who's living in Brampton.
And police say that they are still working to contact the victims' families.
They also say this is an isolated incident. Well, the province is investing more than $3 million to support families of first responders killed in the line of duty or who die by suicide.
The Ontario Immediate Family Wellness Program is going to provide free rapid bereavement counseling to families of fallen officers, firefighters, paramedics, and other public safety personnel for up to 2 years following the death of a loved one.
Each day across Ontario, these individuals put their lives on the line to keep the people of this province safe. And there is potential daily to face unimaginable risk. Whether they're patrolling the streets or manning one of our correctional facilities, all of these actions are important to enhancing public safety in this province. And it comes at a cost. It is this government that recognizes the challenges these individuals face.
I mentioned in the back room that, things that take multi-ministry approaches that bring together different first responders are not always the easiest projects to bring forward, but this one was critically important. And we want to continue that work, and we will continue that work.
And police applauded today's announcement.
Those that risk their personal safety, their psychological well-being, and the sanctity of their families deserve to know that if they pay the ultimate sacrifice, their families will be cared for. And this announcement today does just that. Those that live the ultimate sacrifice by losing a loved one in the course of duty or because of duty will know today that they are cared for, that they are respected, and the province is taking responsibility for their well-being.
The provincial government has invested more than $45 million to ensure public safety workers have access to specialized mental health services.
Well, Premier Doug Ford is the latest provincial leader to call for a meeting with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to discuss the carbon price.
Ford wrote a letter to the Prime Minister saying that the 23% carbon tax hike this week led to a sharp rise in gas prices all over the province. The Premier says the federal government's move is adding more pressure on Ontario families and businesses. In the letter, Ford also recognized the importance of protecting the environment, but said it cannot be done on the backs of hardworking people.
They should get rid of this, totally. The carbon tax drives up the cost of everything, makes our companies uncompetitive, drives up the cost of food and fuel, and everything moves by transportation. Why do we need it? See, we take a different philosophy here in Ontario, and our government takes a different philosophy. You want to reduce emissions? I agree 1,000%. You want to do everything to the environment? I agree. But you don't have to go to one extreme or the other extreme.
Prime Minister Trudeau has said that premiers are inflating the impact of the fuel levy and that the increase will also mean larger rebates, which families are set to receive beginning April 15th.
It is 12:39, 4 degrees. Let's get a check on the drive now. Send things over to Adjoa and Siayabois at the traffic center. Good afternoon.
Oh, good afternoon, Lena. You know, so far so good. We're starting to see volumes increase, but not seeing many problems. We had an issue that did clear. It was on the westbound 401 in the express through Brimley. It was a stalled vehicle. It was in the right lane. It cleared, but as you make your way further west on the 401, delays from Brimley actually out towards about Yonge Street, where you see some relief. On the eastbound 401, it's slow from the 427 out towards the 400. Northbound Don Valley Parkway, pretty busy from Don Mills up to the 401, and it is getting busier. Toronto bound on the QEW for some reason, usually busy. As you head into Mississauga from here, Ontario to Dixie, been searching my cameras, haven't spotted any live lane issues. I'll send it back to you, Lena and Bakari.
The CP24 traffic report is brought to you by CapitalDirect.ca.
Thank you, Adjoa. Coming up next on CP24 Live at noon, we'll find out how the Toronto Zoo is preparing its animals for this Monday's historic eclipse. Welcome back. The Toronto District School Board is calling on the province to remove a moratorium on school closures. The largest school board in the country is dealing with a budget deficit of more than $26 million. And for more on this, we're joined live by TDSB Chair Rachel Chernos-Lynn. Rachel, thanks so much for joining us. This was voted on at a special meeting yesterday. The school board now asking the ministry to lift a ban on closing and merging schools. How would this help your financial situation?
So every underutilized school that we have open in our schools, where schools are underutilized, they're not at capacity, not even close to capacity, well, some of them well below half, that costs us on average about $585,000 a year to keep that school open. It's a very large expense, and it's not only the expense that's an issue, it's also the program that we're able to offer to our students.
Okay, and what do you do if the province says it's not going to lift this ban?
So what we've asked the province to do is to consider, we have asked them to lift the moratorium because it's something that we know all school boards are concerned about. It's something the Ontario Public School Boards Association has raised with them. But we're also offering them an alternative. If you can't lift it province-wide, why not take a look at the TDSB with us and consider doing some exemptions and allow us to do some school consolidations as one-offs. And, because not every board is in the same situation as us. Some are growth boards, and we have a different challenge in our board. We have a lot of empty... We have a... we have a lot of extra secondary spaces. And so if we could consolidate some of those schools, use the money from doing that to create a brand new school, we would be able to have a student body that is much larger and that could offer much richer programming. And it would be a welcome change to families and a welcome change to communities because they would have a stronger school in their community. And this would stop students from perhaps overpassing and bypassing their local school to get to a different school where there's more programming. So this would be a win-win for communities, and it would also be a win financially for us because we would be more efficient and we wouldn't be doubling up and tripling up on services by keeping schools open that have 400 kids in them as opposed to 1,000 or 1,200. And the program would be so much stronger and so much better for kids.
So clearly you're looking for efficiencies here, and that's because the TDSB is looking at a pretty massive deficit, sitting at almost $27 billion. Stephen Lecce, the education minister, he expects you to balance your budget. I want to get to what he's saying because Lecce says, the minister says, the government is working with all school boards, but he says we do expect them to do what every board is doing, which is come up with a balanced budget. That is our expectation. How do you respond to that?
Well, we're working on it. Last night, we made $17 million in reductions. So we're working to get there. We still have a long ways to go. The TDSB, though, has a very large structural deficit that's caused by the province and the way we are funded. You know, we're not topped up for the inflations in CPP and EI. Those should be transfer payments to our board. That costs us about $35 million this year. So it adds to our deficit significantly. The moratorium is a really great example of where we could find efficiencies if the province would let us. But more importantly, we'd also be doing a really good thing for students. So, you know, these are important pieces that we need to consider. And we hope that the ministry will work with us in creative ways to achieve where we need to go.
Okay, we will leave it there. TDSB Chair Rachel Chernos-Lynn, thanks so much for your time. We appreciate this.
Thanks so much.
Monday's solar eclipse is expected to be quite the spectacle, but there are concerns over the pressure that this is going to put on cell and internet service.
Canada's largest telecommunications carriers say they have been preparing for the event, as some regions like Niagara will welcome up to 1 million visitors on Monday. Rogers, Bell, and TELUS say they'll deploy additional infrastructure to some areas to enhance network capacity. Technical teams will also pause routine maintenance work during the solar eclipse to prevent potential disruptions. Tech analyst Carmi Levy joined us earlier to break down what we might expect to experience.
When you put a million people in a small geographic area who aren't normally there, you run the risk of exceeding the capacity of the wireless network to handle everyone using their cell phones to make phone calls, to use apps, to live stream the experience. And so put a lot of people in a limited geographic area, that's going to hammer the wireless network. And the risk is it exceeds the ability of the network to handle that traffic. People aren't going to be able to connect. They won't be able, for example, if there's an emergency, they won't be able to make that call to 911. Emergency services won't be able to communicate with each other. It could be a significant public security issue.
To cause a significant drop in Ontario's power supply. The province's energy minister says that the path of the eclipse will put it directly over the majority of Ontario's solar power generation. That's going to lead to a decrease in electricity of up to 1,800 megawatts. The government says that's enough to power half of Toronto. The province says that it is prepared for the disruption since Ontario has a diverse power grid which draws from nuclear, hydroelectric, renewable and biomass sources, as well as natural gas.
Meanwhile, Canadian airlines say travelers won't see their flight times affected on Monday. Air Canada and WestJet are advising passengers to bring their own protective gear if they want to watch the solar eclipse out of the window. Air Transat says it'll direct passengers to keep their window shades closed on Monday.
And Metrolinx is going to be increasing GO train service on Monday when it's expecting to see a record number of travelers.
There will be special service on the Lakeshore West line for riders heading to see the solar eclipse. 2 extra trips are being added from Union Station to Niagara Falls. Return trips are also being added and modified as well to give customers more departure options. There will also be special event service on the Lakeshore West, Lakeshore East, and berry lines for fans coming into the city for the Jays home opener and Leafs game. So Monday's going to be quite busy.
Yeah, and we're also gearing up for, well, you know, in addition to the Jays home opener, the Toronto Zoo is inviting the community to help document how animals react to the rare celestial event.
And for more on this, we're joined by CTV science and tech expert Dan Riskin and Toronto Zoo CEO Dolph DeJong. Thanks so much for making time for us. This is going to be a really exciting day at the Toronto Zoo. You're asking people to sort of take on the role of junior scientists. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, it's incredible. This is a very rare opportunity. So guests will be citizen scientists taking observations on the animals in our care before, during, and after the eclipse event to see if there's any changes in their behavior. Because this is not just for humans, for animals, unlike anything they've ever seen.
Okay, so let's talk about this unique opportunity, this unique position. So we have CTV science and tech expert Dan Riskin, and then the Toronto Zoo CEO Dolph DeJong. How often do you guys get to work together? How exciting, and what do you expect those junior scientists to take away from this opportunity?
I mean, we work on parallel paths. We're trying to get people excited about science in the natural world, and so this is a great place where it all comes together. You know, if you've got a family and you're in the GTA and you're looking for a way to spend the eclipse that's family friendly, there's nothing better than the zoo. You come here, the kids have plenty to do to keep them busy until that 3 minutes of real darkness. And then when the darkness happens, it's a big learning moment for everybody. And people who are coming to the zoos with their families, you know, they're experiencing these animals and seeing what their sort of baseline behaviors are. And there's nobody better in the world to notice what the animals start doing differently. So people are going to record what they see. They're going to provide that to the zoo, and then the zoo can use that to take better care of the animals in the future and to learn the basic biology of how animals handle weird things happening.
I love that so much. I'm going to ask both of you this question. You know, there's so little documentation about how animals react to the solar eclipse. What do we know about that, and what are you hoping to learn?
Well, we're hoping that we'll either learn something by taking these observations or learn that the animals don't really mind or care. And that's the scientific process playing out right in front of us. We often don't know the outcomes, but without the systemic process, day before, day of, and day after of monitoring, we won't actually be able to describe if that's a change linked to the event or just noise in the data set.
Okay, but I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to jump in and just say, you know, there are some hypotheses, there's some guesses. So Nashville Zoo in 2017 during an eclipse saw giraffes running around a lot. Is that a thing giraffes do? We'll watch the giraffes and find out.
Okay.
Wolves howl at night. It'll look like night, but will it fool them? We'll find out. So we'll see if the wolves start howling. So there's some specific things to look for. But of course, anytime you're watching animal behavior, you just got to keep your eyes open and pay attention to them.
So that actually leads to my question. We kind of know what happens to animals at night. I mean, we're asleep, so, you know, we don't see that. But we're going to have nighttime-like behavior during the daytime. What do you want these junior scientists to specifically look for? And then other people, you know, to notice while they're in their environment, their backyards.
So what we'll have our junior scientists looking for is, are the animals vocalizing? Do we see the diurnal animals starting to bed down? Are the nocturnal animals getting more active? So really looking for those changes in behavior that would be connected with a shift in the photo period.
And then also the glasses. This is very important because we know those are a hot commodity. They're in high demand. Do you still have some left?
Yeah, we do. They'll be available on a first come, first served basis on the 8th. Everybody, be careful out there, protect your eyes. And that's another thing we'll be watching for. We don't know if the animals will be glancing up to see what's happening. And, you know, we've asked, but the cheetahs won't put the glasses on.
Okay, and what is your message? That's unfortunate, but I understand. What is your message to the families who want to come out on Monday? How can they sign up? How can they get involved?
So the best path forward, go to the Toronto Zoo website sooner than later. You can get your plan ahead pricing. Save a few dollars, then get to the zoo. You should probably look to the first half of the day so you can get those eclipse glasses while they're still in stock, and then make the most of the opportunity. It'll be great to be outside, and this is a memory that's really going to last a lifetime, I think, for a lot of people.
All right. So.
Yeah, CTV science and tech expert Dan Riskin, along with Toronto Zoo CEO Dolph DeJong. Thanks so much, and happy eclipse, guys.
Thanks so much. Have the best time on Monday. And thank you for watching CP24 Live at Noon. Coming up after the break,
we're going to have a live look at Toronto Police Headquarters. This is where Deputy Chief Lauren Pogue is set to provide an update on demonstrations in the city. That's going to happen at 1 o'clock. We'll bring that to you live.